I wish I knew how to quit you.
Then why don't you?
This is Codependent Content, a podcast where my partner and I discuss the TV shows, movies, and video games in which we've formed an unhealthy relationship. My name is Mattias, and my co-host is Shannon Riley. Join us each week as we try to make sense of the media we continually give our hearts against our better judgment, and commiserate with us as we struggle and fail to let go of the characters, stories, and worlds that we are entangled with. Because just when we think we're done with content, it draws us back in.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Codependent Content. Today we'll be talking about episode 3 of The Last of Us, Long Time. Now, some housekeeping notes before we get started here. I just want to let you guys know we are open to any and all questions, comments, and concerns. You can email us directly at codependentcontent@gmail.com. We also go live on our Discord every time we record our podcast, and we have a live Q&A afterwards. So if you're interested in joining that, our Discord link will be in the show notes below. Last but not least, obviously, we are both on social media. You can find us at Mattias Allegro or at Shannon Grace Riley. Again, maybe Mattias, you can put the spelling of your name in the show notes, and you can find us there. Mattias is the one that posts all of our podcast clips on his webpage. I'm just here to be cute and talk about dogs. So if you like that sort of content, you can follow me. Mattias, any other housekeeping notes before we dive in?
Yeah, how do we record the podcast?
How do we record the podcast?
How do we talk about the shows? How do we do that?
Well, you can also find us on YouTube if that's what you're trying to...
Give us a spoiler thing.
I don't want to give a spoiler thing. Yeah. Okay. I'm supposed to be better at spoilers. So what we want to do is when we first start talking, we want to keep things as spoiler-free as possible. So we'll pull in information from the current episode, but try to keep things like game lore and future episodes out of the way. We will hit a certain point in the episode where all that shit goes out the window, and I'm going to talk about everything I know in all context, at which point we will tell you that spoilers are forthcoming, and you can either disengage or re-engage as you see fit.
Yes, and usually you'll know that's happening because we're going to go on and talk about next week's episode, things like that. We would try and not bring in any information from the games that could spoil anything. But as far as this episode, it's free game. Consider yourself spoiled if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want to know what happens in the game in particular with this episode, then stop listening. Sorry. As Shannon mentioned, we do go live. We are trying to do this on Discord. So we do have a Discord channel where we're doing this. The times do change. We are on the West Coast. We record at 5:30 Pacific time at the current moment on Mondays. So if you're interested in joining us live, we have a stage channel. You'll be able to find it. We open up with a Q&A afterwards, after our conversation, or just like a general thing where other people can talk with us if they'd like to. Things like that. But again, this is going to change probably from week to week, at least show to show, depending on what we're watching. Because, not every time is something going to come out on Sundays. And so therefore, we're not always recording on a Monday. So we will let you know as those things change. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. But anyway, go to the Discord, have some fun, post some things. We love talking about content. I'm trying to get that to be a thing.
Now,
but yeah.
Mattias, before you get started, I have 2 very important questions for you.
Is it about the show?
It is, in fact, about the show. Okay. Question number 1. Do you identify more as a Bill or a Frank?
What do you think?
What do you think? We'll say it on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Bill.
I didn't have to answer. We already knew.
He's a Bill. And question number 2, equally as important. How many times did you cry?
Once.
Goddamn. Was it one long cry like I had, or was it just one normal person cry? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll touch on that in a little bit. I just wanted to.
That isn't it. So we are, as we said, talking about The Last of Us episode 3. And we kind of mentioned this before, but even when we were recording the first episode, people have been talking about episode 3. Mm-hmm. This thing has been hyped on any social media platform that you can find. Every critic has gotten a hold of the first 3 or 4 episodes. No one would stop talking about it. Most beautiful thing in television. I will say, I think that non-spoilery, I think that kind of hype, I wasn't like, I don't like that.
I don't either.
Kind of gets me in a weird mood. I was like, I was ready to cry. I wanted it, you know? But then maybe when you know it's coming, you steel yourself up, you reserve yourself, and it just doesn't happen the way you think.
Wow, what a Bill thing to say.
Uh-huh.
All right, so, do you want to start us off with a quick episode recap?
Yeah, so we're going to try something a little different to hopefully move the conversation forward and to attempt to not always be recapping things, because I don't want this to just be a recap podcast. So I'm going to do a very small overview of what's happened in the episode, just as a reminder, to hopefully jumpstart our conversation.
Great, let's have it.
So this is Mattias' recap, episode 3. Ellie and Joel have escaped Boston, still stinging from the sacrifice Tess made in the last episode. I'd say Joel is also stinging physically from the time he punched that one guy in episode 1.
I hate you.
Though tensions are high, Ellie reminds Joel that their circumstances are far from her fault, and Joel silently allows this logic. They continue their journey, and Joel fills in Ellie and us on how the outbreak started. They stop at an old store where Joel has some gear stashed, and Ellie finds some old tampons, as well as a not as old infected, where she has a moment with it before disposing of it. Then we stumble upon an old killing field, which leads us into another flashback to the beginning of the outbreak, an evacuation of a town, and a prepper named Bill in a bunker he has clearly decided he doesn't want to go. After years of making this his new fortified home, he captures another man in a hole named Frank. Bill and Frank then have a meet cute, fall in love, and we spend the rest of the episode and the next 20 years witnessing a story of healing, loss, and the lengths we will go to protect those we love. Joel gets his battery, Ellie gets her gun, and we get a broken heart. And we watch as they drive off into the sunset with new rules established and a whole lot of hope that is sure to last another 4 episodes. I think that's a great. So that's the episode. Shannon, why don't you start us off?
Okay.
What do you think of this?
I'll do some gentle driving. So something that I really liked about this episode was that it just reinforces the idea that The Last of Us is about relationships. It's not about zombies, killing zombies. Like, it is a show centered around the human condition and building relationships. Another thing that I really liked, which kind of ties into that, is Bill's suicide note in the game is more aggressive. There's more animosity between the two partners. Did I say Bill? I'm sorry. I'm just looking at you and thinking Bill. So Frank's suicide note in the game is so much more, it's darker, it's more aggressive. There's animosity between the two partners. And I think the way that Craig Mazin chose, again, love and vulnerability over like the violence and the darkness, that seems to be a theme with him, like the clicker's kiss versus violence. And now we have this like romance episode versus a darker suicide. I just think that I like the more intimate turns the TV show is like letting us explore instead of it just being this dark, like damning presence all the time.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel good about this deviation from the game? I mean, for those who aren't aware, this is a huge departure from the game in that we never actually meet Frank. He's already dead by the time we kind of meet him. And Frank and Bill have had a falling out of sorts, and it was only the story was only ever hinted at. Here we're getting a whole other thing, but in order to do that, we're pulling away from Ellie and Joel's story to have this moment, to give this amazing story. How did you feel about that?
I think the performances were incredible. And I think if the performances were weaker, this story would have been less intriguing to me, and I would have missed Joel and Ellie more, especially because Pedro and Bella Ramsey are just so dynamic and charismatic together. But I think that Nick and Murray brought something really special and warm and intimate to the screen, and it was a pleasure to spend that time with them, both as characters in the story and as actors, like in their craft and in their element. Similar to kind of what you were saying, I hate and not to sound pretentious, but I do hate when things just become so hyped that if everyone's going to be talking about this one thing in the same way, it kind of puts expectations on me that I feel that just can't be matched. So there are actually parts of this episode that I don't like, that I feel are a little too on the nose. I'm like, oh, here's the like point I was supposed to get. But I can forgive all of that because the performances just draw you in and they make you like really empathize and put yourself into that position. And that's where like all of my tears came from.
Yeah. There's been a lot of moments where I feel like Craig Mazin doing an amazing job of adapting this video game and doing the show has obviously put in things that were completely his.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had the first opening with the in 1968, the little
Like
talk show thing.
Yeah.
We have an extended prologue. We have another opening in Jakarta in the last episode, and now we have basically a full episode. You know, so like he is doing things that are very much things that I feel like were his ideas, things that he resonated with, that he thought were good opportunities to do as well. And I don't fault him for those things, despite the fact that like, this is why the reason I love the game so much is because it was just straight to the point. Joel Ellie, that's it. But but it is a video game, you know, and we're following one perspective that entire time, and it makes sense. And this is a different medium where like if you're going to have the opportunity, branch out in those things, and I love him for it. I'm a weird battle in my senses of like where I feel like I love this so much, but also like we've been talking so much about Joel and Ellie and how their relationship is going, and then we don't really get that, you know, and it's kind of a little bit frustrating. I do like that they do bring it back though, you know, in a sense that we do learn so much more about Joel and Ellie, and Joel's relationship with Ellie, and the future relationship with Ellie, and Joel's relationship with Tess, even by just watching Bill and Frank.
Absolutely. No, you're right.
You know,
you're right.
And there's going to be that like echoing of things and stuff like that. That's going to be happening. I think throughout the rest of the season, but specifically in this episode. You know, here is speaking of Joel and Ellie's relationship. They're not in a good spot when this starts off. You can tell they're both still really, really mad. We talked about that last time, how Joel was super mad at what happened. He was mad at Ellie. They've clearly gone like a whole night and probably half a day or something, just still mad. Who knows, right? Walked at least 10 miles.
Right.
You know, probably in silence the whole time. I get the feeling that Joel has been here before with Tess. That little monument was, you know, has already started to be built. I don't know if it's something that they used to do just to remind them, you know, or see if people have come by or something like that, you know. I don't know, but he's definitely still hurting from everything. And I love that you also see Ellie is like just mad at him, and when he comes back from having like left her there in the morning, and she's still, and you know, she has been thinking.
Our girl's had some thoughts
as she's mentioned. Was he not going to feed her? Did he opened up some food out of his pack, and he was wrapping it back up, and then he realized, oh yeah, she's here too, and then like tossed her the food.
Honestly, yeah, like if you're used to Tess being your partner, you know, Tess would have her own food, and then you realize is like, oh, fuck, I got this kid with me. Like, of course I have to feed her. But I loved, you know, so much. Relationships are just conversations, and I hope that doesn't sound stupid, but there has to be an extension and then like a reciprocation. And I really liked, you know, Ellie's sitting by that tree trunk. She's got his jacket over her knees, like whatever that implies. Maybe he saw that she was cold. Maybe she ended up being cold. Maybe he took it off. She was cold. She took it.
Everything he does is so reluctant. I wouldn't be surprised if like he did it, but it was very much like, again, the same thing with the food. With
like just throwing it at her.
like, why didn't you say something in the first place, or what, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of.
But, you know, there's really, there's really no need for her to ask, do you want your jacket back? As soon as he approaches. But that's her way of trying to like bridge that gap in communication. And, you know, it's just waiting for him to like kind of feed back into it. But I also love that she'll immediately push back when he's like, I don't want your apology. She's like, well, good, fuck you. Because I wasn't going to say sorry because you're not going to pin like more of your trauma onto me. And I really like that because it shows you like she is so soft and she wants that connection with him, but she's also willing to kind of put him in his place, give him some shit. And I think that continues as they're walking down that road. That
she's such a teenager.
She's very.
You know, he doesn't actually agree with her or like disagree with her. I guess you get the idea, but he allows it. As
it's just
I said,
little nod.
You know.
Yeah.
But it opens the door, as it were, and Ellie jumps into that door
with both feet so fast,
and just doesn't stop. I never related to Joel so much more than I have in this.
I have never related to Ellie more in that moment. Like, of course she's asking questions, getting excited, and Joel's just like, Jesus, fuck.
What have I done? Should have stayed mad at her. So I'm curious about this thing with the infected thing. The infected person. She has this moment with it, you know, and she's been enjoying this journey, but like clearly she's not. She's here and she's not amused, but curious about it. I think she's like wondering, like, when she cuts it open, is this what's happening to me? Is this like on the inside of me, you know? And she's almost mad at it, you know? I wrote down, I'm curious, like, do you think this was something she did to see what she's capable of? Or was she just showing some sort of mercy with this thing? I'm not sure how to feel about like what the scene was really about for her, what this thing, you know, besides the fact that again, she keeps having to remind herself that she's not a child, you know?
Yeah.
And like just when she thinks she's like having a little bit of fun and she's getting a little bit closer to Joel, and then this thing happens and she keeps reminding herself that like, oh yeah, this thing exists out there, and for some reason I might have a purpose beyond that, and that's a lot, you know? And then also like, why me?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, Ellie has such a dark, almost morbid curiosity to her. We see it in the first episode when she's watching Joel beat the shit out of someone, that she is interested and that she kind of likes it. Yeah, there's a pull in her toward, again, just like a morbid curiosity. And I kind of read into this as not revenge, not getting back for losing Tess, but, you know, they got Tess, and in her little like brain space of where she is, that cut was curiosity, and then the killing is just exactly that. Like
it's madness, right? It's anger. That like that this thing exists at all, you know, and that it has taken so much away from her.
Yeah,
we'll find out more about what that means, but like, I mean, she's an orphan. She has no one around. She's stuck with this guy, and she's had, and now Tess. Yeah, she's had so much taken away from her, but then that is what kind of like leads into the curiosity, right? Like she sees this thing and she just doesn't understand it, and she's mad at it, and then that moves us into her asking about like, how did this happen? You know, mostly for us, I think. You know, we kind of get that kind of stuff. You know, the internet was right, or whoever figured it out, or wherever the leaks were. It
Good
was
job, Reddit.
In the flower supply. Yes, we got it, you know, but again, it doesn't matter, you know, it whatever happened, you know. Anything else about those things that you had written down or heard thought about during these conversations?
Not, again, so weird that I spent so much time in the past 2 episodes just digging as deep as I can into Ellie's psyche. And I have like 1 note on her for this episode. Most of my meat is with Bill and Frank. So yeah, if you have anything else to say about our little precursor to Bill and Frank, I think I'm ready to.
No, that was
dive
pretty
in.
much it.
Okay.
Do you like Bill? How's Bill for you?
Strap in, guys. Okay, so there's a reason, and Mattias, I feel like we've had this conversation before. There's a reason that we love like those types of characters, the ones that are hardened by whatever reality that they've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because we like to be around them necessarily at first, or because we like what they're doing, or because we understand where they're coming from. It's almost because we sense the soft in them, and we're just so excited to like pick that out again.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I like spending time with Bill, honestly kind of love that he's a survivalist, like love that he's prepped, love that he's just ready to live his fucking life.
He's everything I want to be.
Oh God. Okay. But again, the reason I like spending time with him is because of how much more he's capable of being. So not only is he a capable, intelligent, like human being to survive in this post-pandemic world, he's also this soft, caring, like kind individual.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that dichotomy come from one character is so interesting and so exciting to watch. And I liked the ebb and flow of Bill's characterization kind of being shown through what the town looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we first meet Bill through Frank's eyes, the town is kind of in disrepair, right? Like he has everything that he needs, but nothing's taken care of. Nothing, there's weeds, there's garbage, like the house is dirty. And then as he comes more into himself and lets himself open up and start receiving more things from the world, the town livens up too. And I know that Frank brings so much of that, but it's also showing like Bill's growth and almost recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they both ail, like the tender decline of the city where nothing's as like decrepit as it was when Bill was just fucking around and not doing anything to it. There's still little touches of care, but it's still like just degrading slowly. And I liked that matched the evolution of these two characters and their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Bill, he's living the dream.
Yeah, I mean,
at least for this first 4 years, you know, he's doing everything you could ever want. I love how the production design is just like off the charts in this episode. There's like little details like here and there that you can catch the first time, you don't catch until the second time. I love that this town doesn't exist. I seen like a behind the scenes thing. Like this is like they built this in like a field with like some asphalt. That's pretty much it. And so like the fact that all this is kind of like there enhanced by CGI. I just loved it so much. I love what we feel like that Nick Offerman could do all this stuff.
Absolutely.
You believe it. You
A+
know?
casting.
Again, someone I wish I could be if I was rich enough. Maybe I'll just wait for my own outbreak and everyone can leave and then I'll go to Home Depot.
Oh my God.
And then that's it. I love that's the first place he goes. Yeah. Did you? But I'm sure that what was your impression when Frank first showed up?
So this is going to touch into like, I don't really like what's happening territory.
Oh.
Mattias and I both noticed, I think we both liked how long it took him to say no.
Oh, it's hilarious. Cause like and then Nick Offerman had the exact same response that I had. It was like, why did you take so long?
Literally they like both said that at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm literally sitting next to a Bill. But I liked imagining, at least from Bill's point of view, Bill hasn't seen another human being in years. And this man drops into your pit.
Yeah. When do you think he makes the choice to allow this man to stay and to have a shower and to have a meal? Because there clearly is, I think it does come from the fact that he has been alone for 4 years. And even though it's, again, living the dream, what is all this worth if you're not sharing it with someone?
I'm going to cry.
Okay, well. When did that moment, when do you think he decided to do that?
I think almost immediately.
Or you think like when you saw him in the hall, you saw how handsome
He just thought he was a
Murray
hottie and he was
Bartlett
like, fuck it,
was.
let him stay. If I die, I die. No, I think without logic or reasoning or any of his survival, like anything, I think something in him immediately wanted to say yes, which is why maybe he doesn't immediately attack, which is why he checks to see if he's infected, which is why he lets himself be affected by what Frank is saying, because Frank is obviously pitching to stay and to get into the house and to maybe, you know, like build some sort of functional relationship, whether it's just to eat, shower, and leave or whatever. And there is a part of Bill that just, like, I think desperately wants that.
Yeah, but we see he's not a trustworthy a trusting person.
Right.
I and even from the very beginning, he hates people. He loves to hate people. And I think that the thing that can go unnoticed about Bill is that he's probably actually really good at reading people.
Yeah.
You imagine that the reason he's like this is because he's been screwed over plenty of times.
Sure.
You know, like other people are just terrible human beings. It makes sense that he would be like this. He lived with his mother, you know. He grew up probably in a time, again, in the 80s, where being a gay man was just not, you know, like in where he was just not accepted, you know. So he sees like how things were done, you know. So clearly he like repressed all those things. I think when we see how he's able to like understand like Joel and Tess surprise cameo.
Yeah.
We get to see how he like reads them, and who he can probably considers a threat, and as Frank rightly points out, Bill knows that Frank's a bad liar. And so yeah, I think Bill can actually read that this guy's not a threat. And he made me maybe kind of laugh a little bit, you know, like he caught me on a thing, you know, like there's something like, you know, there's a point where I think he doesn't ever let his guard down because he doesn't want to, but he does understand he's very good at reading that this guy's not actually going to do anything. And that's how he's like survived for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that matters, that Bill, despite how untrusting he is and how guarded he is, he actually knows people probably better than anyone else. And like he knows who kind of Frank is, you know, like almost immediately, and that this guy's not here to, you know, destroy anything or do, you know, or take from him or do whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
And I feel like we meet people in life that for whatever reason, like make us feel safe or seen in some way. That's why you meet someone and you just automatically click with them. I'm not saying this is exactly that because of the way that they met, but you can tell when you meet someone special. You can tell when you meet someone that like is going to give you the space to be seen. And for whatever reason, I think they just see that in each other. And along with all of the other factors, like the fact that Frank has been alone and Bill has been alone for longer, and the damage that Bill carries and the shame and the probably guilt of other things that he has, just like Frank's energy is the perfect counterbalance to that sort of whatever Bill's internal monologue is. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that we never, you know, he gives him clothes, he feeds him. He never actually asks Frank to leave. You know, Frank actually just kind of assumes like, okay, I guess I'll go now. You know, we did the thing that we wanted, but he sticks around for longer. We know a little bit of how this was supposed to be written and how things happen based on the podcast and stuff, you know, but he sees the dust. You mentioned like how he sees this man and how he's living, you know. What do you think he's thinking in all this, you know? And especially like, yeah, what do you think he's thinking through here? And after they play the song, when he like tells Bill to go, Do you have any thoughts of what's going on through his head?
Yeah, so for Frank, and I only know this for certain because the After Show podcast mentions it, that Frank can almost immediately flag Bill as a fellow homosexual middle-aged man. And I think if Frank knows that and sees the way that Bill acts and the way that he's living, there's a part of Frank, because of who Frank is, that wants to like share his warmth and his love. And again, I'm not saying they dive right into it. I'm not saying he wants to immediately fall in love with this man. I'm just saying that there is like acceptance and warmth in him that he's just ready to give. It's also, despite the fact that Bill is a survivalist and does often but is often a take charge man, he takes such the like shy, passive, reluctant role because Frank is the one that's like kind of being wined and dined, but feels more steady on his feet in this situation. I feel like Bill is really put back a little bit because he's maybe never met someone like Frank, either in his warmth or in his acceptance or in the way that he carries himself. And I think Frank can read that. So I have a note about body language when Nick Offerman is at the piano. Also, I've 100% seen you in this position, but when he's standing there, he has his hands clasped in front of him and his shoulders are kind of high and he's just looking at Frank. Basically, like you can tell that he not wants to show off, but like you know he plays piano. You can tell he probably plays piano well and he has opinions about how Frank is playing piano and he wants to like open this and share and he's afraid to, and Frank opens that door for him. He says, by all means, gets up, lets him sit down. And as he's playing, those shoulders just kind of come away and his body language changes and it leads into that kiss, which is also so shy and reluctant on his end. It's almost like he's afraid to let himself be affected by this random man that just fell into a pit like a couple hours ago. But you already feel that special connection. So I really liked that. I don't know exactly what Frank is thinking. I can't imagine like feeling that in control of a situation with someone that I just met. I feel like I would be more on Bill's end of just like, wow, do we have this chemistry? And I don't really know what's going on. I haven't been around someone, but I love the weird dynamic that they just come together.
I think that maybe before the outbreak, Bill wasn't probably Frank's type. Not exactly. But I think as the day goes on and he sees how this man like is treating him, but then he's also seeing how he's living. He's like looking around, he realizes this guy has everything. Seems like he's built everything, but like he's clearly on his own, the dust he's wiping off of the surfaces, I think he's just wondering to over and over again. I think it gets to a point where he would have left, I think if he didn't have an opening with the piano and stuff like that, there's like a moment where he says, okay, go take a shower. And then he sits down at the piano and he's, to me, wondering, is there a place for me here? And I think he has a long time to think about that, even in the bedroom when he's waiting for Bill to come back. Do I really want to do this? Do I really want to be here? Is this a place for me? And or is it, am I like fooling myself kind of thing?
Yeah.
I'm sure that Frank did not expect this,
Absolutely not.
There's a convenience to it, if he's like, man, well, I get to have rabbit and wine and hot water, and this is much better than the QZ, I'm sure. So I think he's also wondering, like, is this right for me to be like doing this? Is this right for me to not take advantage of this man, but to like kind of use him in this way? But he makes it clear that this is if I do this, if we get into this, I want it to mean something.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a thing where, you know, we're exchanging something, we're not using each other kind of thing. Like, like he wants it to mean something, you know. I think he's probably also looking for that as well, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I feel like could be going on, but that's mainly what I'd kind of been like approaching. I wouldn't know, not having been in a similar situation, but yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ruin all of that like vulnerability talk with in my brain, they kissed. I think that Bill got a boner. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Did you see that too? Because the reason I think that is because when he just says, go take a shower, and then is in his bed naked, you see Nick Offerman kind of waddle away before he goes up the stairs. And I just wondered if like that's what's being implied. It's not like, oh, I took a shower, now you can take a shower. He's like, go take a shower. Like, I feel we feel the connection, like it's gonna be okay. I don't know. Did any of y'all see that? It's fine. That's kind of what I thought though. So I was like, oh, they just had this intimate moment and Bill is like, oh God, oh no. And Frank's like, it's okay.
Is this a love story? I don't know how you want me to transition from this, Shannon.
I'm sorry.
Do you think this is a love story of convenience, basically, or a true, for the ages, romantic, written in the stars?
You know, I would argue that all romance is out of convenience first. You know, we don't fall in love with people that live in. I'm sorry. We don't fall in love with people that live in California and I live in New York. You know what I mean? We fall in love with people that are in our immediate environment. It's convenience, it's time spent together, it's necessity sometimes. So do I think that it was a written in the stars romance, destined to meet, destined to fall in love? No. And I think that's what makes it so fucking functional, is that it's not two star-crossed lovers. It's two men meeting each other at a point in their lives where they need the other person. Mm-hmm. So it works.
Yeah, and the thing about their love story is that it starts off like okay, you know, but I think the thing about it is that it gets stronger. I know Craig Mazin talked about this, that this is what he wanted to represent. Love is sometimes this thing that like happens and is whirlwind for like a few months, maybe a year, that kind of thing, but the kind of love that he wanted to represent was not that kind of love. He wanted to represent something that like that only comes with time. You know, I remember reading Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari, and he graphs this out a little bit too, how in the way that people talk about love and the way they did surveys, you know, like, yes, there's this like peak of love whenever you're first getting into a relationship. That's what we would consider the honeymoon phase, things like that. But then it dips so low. And then it takes a really, really long time for you maybe even never reach that peak. But if you do, it takes time and it takes years for that to happen. And I just like love that we have this represented, you know, with Bill and Frank, and especially how this deviates from the game where it's like they don't have that falling out, but we know that they have arguments. Yeah. You know, we know that they have bad days, you know. Yeah. We're introduced to this new argument. New old argument, because they've had it before. He's like, if you tell me about resource management again, you know, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna go into one of your trip mines. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about resource management, or? I would love to talk about resource management.
Before, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go back one more, just back to the intimate moment before the door says. The door slams and they're in their little argument X amount of years later. Something that really excites me about this hour and 15 minutes of television is that we have two stereotypically masculine presenting men being incredibly intimate, vulnerable, soft on television. And again, incredible performances around the board from two really strong, capable actors, but really wonderful to see that sort of representation. I'm so tired of seeing I don't want to make it. Okay. I'm so tired of seeing stereotypical heterosexual relationships, and that's fine, and everyone's okay with seeing them, and then you sub it out for two women, and everyone kind of likes that too, because watching two women be intimate is somehow more normalized or maybe hot to some people. But when you put it onto two men or two male identifying humans, it can make people more uncomfortable. I think that we see that less than we see other types of romantic love in media currently. I don't have stats for that. I don't know. That's just how it feels to me. So to watch Nick Offerman and Murray just like create this beautiful story and not shy away from the arguments, the love, the sincerity, the vulnerability, I think is just beautiful, and I want more of it. Men being soft in film, in TV, let's do it. So just jumping out of that, if you don't have any extra commentary.
No, I mean, just the fact that this is also just beautifully shot from
It's so
end to
pretty.
end.
It's so pretty.
You know, the way that the story like should have been. Like, this is why people are resonating with the stories, because we're finally getting something that is just like also beautifully shot.
Yeah.
And we're representing this thing, I think, one way that we didn't expect, and then one way we know it was always meant to be, in a way. You know? Mm-hmm.
But something I liked is that Frank asks, "Do I ask for things ever?" And it just reminds me of Tess saying, "I don't ask you for anything." And it puts these types of relationship like right into plain view. You have someone that through their damage, through their experience, is maybe more closed off, more reserved, fear that manifests in anger or withdrawal. And then you have the person that's willing to put up with it most of the time and then like push when they need their needs met. And I just think it's funny that, again, we come from Tess saying that to Joel as she's dying, and then Frank saying this to Bill, like, this is the way we show love. We take care of things. We care for things. Like, let me love this thing the way that I want to. And Bill's like, God damn it. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. And I like that, because Bill is so like stubborn and set in his ways, and he doesn't put the same weight on things that Frank puts on certain things, and vice versa. And I think that's almost what makes them a good pairing, is because you can't just be one or the other. Like, there's a reason that Bill survives well, and there's a reason that Frank is able to make friends and why they work together as a unit. It's because where one lacks, the other like has those strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the similarities are definitely there, to the point where when Frank says, "I've been talking to a woman on the radio," and Bill like freaks out. I imagine what? Joel had this exact same reaction when Tess was like, I actually met someone, and I was like, and you've been what?
You've been doing what now?
Yeah, we're gonna go where? We're gonna go away from Boston. How far to what again? What am I getting myself into? There's no way like he didn't have that, and there they are at the table doing this thing. There's definitely this is a great parallel. I love seeing how Joel and Bill mirror each other, and Frank and Tess kind of mirror each other, especially to the point where we see how, with being able to be self-sufficient as Bill and Frank are, how they're able to build something that Tess and Joel are not able to, because they're always on the move. They always have a job to do. They don't have a chance. We talked about in the last episode, even their home life situation and how that looked. They haven't built much of anything. You know, they don't keep very many things around. It's very bare bones, very minimal kind of situation. And I think that, like, it's really tragic. You know, we get to see like a Tess that doesn't seem as maybe like, I don't know, broken, you know,
beaten down.
I don't know. So, I mean, same with Joel, you know, they're younger here, at least 10 years younger. And maybe not even sure. Maybe this was at a point where they thought maybe they could build something, but they never get around to it. They stay stuck in their own ways. Whereas like Frank and Bill they get to build something here, Yeah. And I love those like similarities and differences that we get in this like one little scene. I love how Joel kind of pleads their case a little bit in time of like how they can help each other and stuff like that. He's still very practical. The way he points out the fence, because like we know he used to be a contractor, so like he understands these things, so he's using his knowledge. But then he like also does the thing that Bill does to him later, is like reminding him that this is not just you. You may think you are self-sufficient, you may think you're fine here, but don't forget there's another person that's in that house right now. He says lives. And I think he's kind of appealing to himself as well. In a way. Bill definitely gets through to him later, Yeah. I don't think Joel takes his own advice of like recognizing that like, hey, like you want this to last, we can get you something to last the rest of your lives, both of you, Right. And Bill, being the person that he is, as we come to know him, that's what he believes is his purpose, is to protect this person. If it was just him, he wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't have dealt with these people. But because there is someone else involved, he takes it seriously,
Yeah.
And I find that, quite moving for sure. Any thoughts there?
I just like that we choose what we let affect us and who we let affect us. And because of that, you have to deal with things that you normally would or would not tolerate. So it's just like you're saying. You're right. There's no reason that Bill would have ever needed to really interact with Bill or Tess. I'm sorry, with Joel or Tess. But because he cares about Frank, he's putting a fresh coat of paint on the house and inviting people over for fucking afternoon tea. And it's like, when you care so deeply about another person's well-being, it changes the way that you take care of yourself too. Yeah. So,
and I think this is such a beautiful parallel to things that could have been for Joel and Tess as we go through this episode, and as we see from like the last episode, because I see the fact that like Joel, he doesn't want to put labels on things, as it were.
God damn it.
He says it's like, well, mine will, is all. He doesn't say, he starts to say my girlfriend, my whatever, And again, you asked me last episode, like, do you think this was a one-sided love? And here's kind of an answer. Even 10 years ago, like, what was this? Like he would never put a label on it. I think Bill in the same way. They never put a label on it. Right. I think, like, how many times do you think Frank has asked, marry me? We can just marry me, until like the final day where they finally get married. How many times do you think he's asked that where Bill has said no, resource management, or something like that, right?
Or like, why we don't need to, like, it doesn't matter.
And then he finally does it, right?
In the
same way,
that.
And again, and then Joel and Tess are never going to get that. So we have a happy ending and we have a tragic kind of ending, super interesting to me that Joel, I think, again, and then just an answer that like it clearly was very, very kind of one-sided in that sense for Joel and Tess. I love that we get a little bit of like glimpse into that.
But in a way, I would also argue it shows that it's also not completely one-sided, because if you can read into what Bill and Frank's relationship is and then draw the parallel of saying my Frank, you know what I mean? It's like he sees, I don't think there's any part of him that thinks that TV Bill and Frank are just like business partners and friends.
Not at all.
So for him to be able to say like mine, just because I'm speaking as Joel.
Yes,
I'm not able to slap a label
But how do
on
you,
this.
I mean, people probably, we have these arguments, people have these arguments all the time. How can you be in a relationship if someone's not committed, right?
Right.
If you can't if you can't really say like, you know what this is, if you can't call it for what it is, if you can't,
Right.
if you can't be open to this like actually happening, you know? And I think Bill was in some way a little bit more open than
Joel, yeah.
Than Joel was.
Because their
you know? Like,
circumstances
so like,
allow
yeah,
him to
you can
do
keep
that.
saying like, yes, we all know he had feelings for her. I'm not saying he didn't.
Right.
He clearly had feelings for her. Bill clearly has feelings for Frank.
Right.
But there's something in Joel that doesn't allow him to ever like say like
Yeah.
to build anything
Absolutely.
with that or to do anything with it. It's just that is they have a relationship of convenience for sure in his mind, you know. It's there, it fits the time, you know, and I think there's a possibility that things could change or do whatever, but he will never like allow it for some reason, you know. And I don't think that is a relationship. I don't think I would call that a love either, you know. I think that's just like repressed feelings, you know, for things, you know, and a unwillingness to change or to commit, whatever you want to call it, you know. I think it's just quite tragic, you know. But I do think, and it leads me to like the next thing. We do see like Bill changes, you know. We get the moment where he thought he was going to die, and as opposed to losing Bill or Frank, like we lost Tess, like they both survive. They both protect each other. They both are able to succeed in keeping each other alive. And Bill changes, you know? He went from being the guy who was like yelling about resource management to when his lover is no longer able to water the flowers, he'll do it for him. And you see in that moment that he is willing to care. He is willing to go all in. You know, he is willing to like be there. It's like I think he realizes like none of this matters. Like I could protect everyone, I could do everything, but it doesn't matter if it's just me. You know, it doesn't matter if I lose this person. It doesn't matter if I can't protect this person. You know, I mean.
Yeah, I liked that as well, that we jump all the way to 2023 and then we see all the paintings around the house, all the paint still like in the garden room, the sunroom, the care of Bill watering the plants. That's such a small thing, but that's such a big thing. Cuz you know Bill doesn't give a shit about those plants. But again, it's like the people that we let affect us affect what we care about. And yeah, I thought that was really touching. And I love the little wink he gives him, like just like right before he starts watering them and then he walks away. What a sweet just moment between two people existing in the same space.
I missed that wink. I don't know that it existed, but I'll take your word for it.
I didn't see it the first time. I looked at it the second time. But Winkgate, let me know if I'm making shit up. Honestly, I might not have been able to see clearly because there was a lot of crying happening during this episode. So perhaps I made that up. But no, I think, you know, he just, right before he starts watering that plant, he gives him a little wink and Frank smiles. And is the painting of Bill? I
think so. I think we see a lot of paintings of Bill. We do. You know, and he's been painting for a while. And you assume that might have been an argument. I want paints. I want to paint.
Oh, yeah.
Where am I going to go get paints
Resource
from?
management, you know? For sure.
But he got him paints. You know, he's changing. He's learning to do this. And again, so heartbreaking. Like to go from being the person, being the vulnerable person, like I'm old and I'm afraid and I'm sorry that I'm getting older than you, to like suddenly having to take care of this person that's like now like deteriorating, you know. I love that line. I was never afraid
before you showed up.
And like that is Bill. Old Bill would never have been able to admit that he was afraid, period.
Yeah.
He was definitely not afraid when we first meet him, you know? He had everything together. He knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
He was a survivalist, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you see like how this has changed. It's like, so, I mean, you know, screw Craig Mazin for having written that line. I hate him forever.
Blasphemous. No, it's just, you know, the scariest thing we do in life is like make ourselves vulnerable to the people that we love.
Mm-hmm.
We give people all the information and the weapon to hurt us by being vulnerable and like sharing those intimate moments. And it's almost easier to be prepared for infected than it is to be prepared for how love is going to push and pull at you for 25 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the like terrified, gleeful, like half cry giggle that Nick Offerman lets out when he bites into that strawberry. And I think that's such a small moment in life, but really is just like a moment that hits him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he realizes like the part of him that says like, I'm sorry that I'm getting older. Like I'm older than you are. I'm getting older faster than you are. It's kind of him afraid too of like, not only am I going to leave this person here alone by themselves to possibly fend for themselves at some point, but then like, I'm going to have to be without you. And I think that's like a little bit of the undercoloring of that comment too. It's not just I'm sad for you, or I'm afraid to leave you alone. And I'm also a little bit sad for me because you've come into my life and you've made me like open to the joy of a strawberry. Like I can't see old Bill giggle crying over a strawberry in 2003 or 2013.
No, it's definitely like we were seeing a very, very different Bill than what we were introduced to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to ask, do you like old Bill, new Bill? What's going I think clearly like you like the new Bill that we have, but again, there's something about like if we don't have old Bill, we don't get the beauty of new Bill.
It's the evolution
you know?
that you fall in love with. Again, that's why we like these lone wolf and cub stories, or why we like these hardened, grumpy men who have a soft spot for someone. And it's because it shows you that even when things are hard and life damages us and we experience loss and pain and shame and grief, that there is still like warmth and hope and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so Frank is an enjoyable character from start to finish, but the true pleasure is watching Bill regrow into like what he's capable of being, like the full evolved form, someone who is capable and intelligent, is a survivalist, does have all of these kind of like stubborn, nitpicky things about him, and can like water flowers for the love of his life and get him paints when he needs something. Like that's what makes an interesting character, is seeing that growth and that evolution.
There's a small detail in the production design and that I put my own little backstory to, and it's the fact that when Bill rolls Frank in from the front, when we first jump to the 10 years later, wheels him in, and we see Frank is in this wheelchair. They enter the front door, and there's a cane in the background. And I know Nick Offerman is a woodworker, would have loved to have been a woodworker in another life. And I assume he made that. I assume that Bill, when Frank was first deteriorating, made that cane. Looks like a cane you could probably bought at a store, but my backstory is that he made that cane before he went and found a wheelchair and before it got so bad that he had to do that, you know. Just knowing how Nick Offerman is and stuff. And again, resource management be damned, You know, this is a new Bill.
My boy needs a cane. I'm gonna get him a cane.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make him a cane.
And I think like what kind of a beautiful sentiment for Frank. Just a good observation for him to say, like, you know, I've had more good days with you than anyone else. And like at the end of the day, it's like we all have our pasts. We all have our journeys. We all have our relationships that we go through, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what more do you want? What more can you ask for than at least having like more good days with one person, you know, because like relationships aren't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that a lot in like all the relationships in the show and in this episode, particularly. And yeah, what more can you ask for than more good days than I see you're not going to be able to talk much anymore because I'm just going to keep bringing up things to make you cry.
Keep bringing up things that are going to make me cry.
Yeah. Well, here's a question.
Okay.
A question I asked you earlier, and a question when off podcast, and a question I'm going to bring up here. Who do you think, after 20 years, who's the more selfish person in this relationship, in this moment, when Frank asks him to help him commit suicide?
So, throwing it all the way back to 2013, where they're having that goofy argument in the street.
Sure.
About paint.
Yeah. No, actually, that's 2000. Sorry to correct you. That would have been 2010, I believe. It was 4 years they met, 3 years they had that argument, and then 2013 was when the raid happened.
Oh, okay. So the argument on the street with the paint in 2010-ish, when he says, like, do I ever ask for anything? Do I ask you for anything?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you for fucking paint. I think in the scheme of their relationship that Bill has probably been the more stubborn one and Frank has been the one to concede. So in a way, this is Frank asking for what he needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also noticed that at a certain point he stopped asking, because remember he traded that gun without permission.
Mm-hmm.
So he eventually stops asking for things and just starts doing things.
Mm-hmm. Which, happens.
Yeah.
But that is to say that this is something that holds a lot of weight for Frank, and he knows to ask for it. It's not get me paint. I bought these strawberries. It's something so important and so pivotal in his life that it's something that he needs, and he just asks for it. So selfish in the way that it is for self, and that he trusts the love of his partner to help him have a good last day.
How would you feel though?
Do you
if
want
I
me
asked
to
you?
cry?
How would you feel if I asked you to do that though?
If you were to put me into that,
because I would be asking you not only to do this thing. Well, again, I'll say that Frank didn't ask. He said, you're going to do this.
mm-hmm.
Not only is he telling him that he's doing this, he's telling him that you're going to live on and have a life without me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to continue. You're going to be back to where you started. You're going to be back to where it was before I came along. Bill doesn't even remember what that was. He doesn't remember that life. It's
good.
I mean, all relationships are a little bit selfish. I think we talked about it. Everything is kind of like a relationship of convenience. Everything's a relationship of selfishness. Like we are always constantly thinking about ourselves before we're thinking about another person. I think that's the whole thing about their whole relationship, and I think it is his turn in some ways to kind of be selfish,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he is having it. I think he is being selfish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, not necessarily selfish in a negative connotation, but just selfish in the sense of like for self. But the moment that Nick Offerman makes the face that I was making for like 10 minutes before this even happened, that like that cry face you make when that sob really racks in your chest, but you like don't want to let it out and you kind of like sit on it. I feel like that was the moment that he thought of who he would be with Frank gone. Like imagining what new Bill, how that person fills the void of that Frank would leave. And I think that terrifies him also. I don't think there's any part of him that wants to live without Frank. And I think pretty quickly he decided that, he was going to yes and this request. I don't think it was something that like he went through the whole day and was like, you know what, maybe I'll take some pills too. I think a lot of him also thought that, if he's going out, I'm going out.
Yeah, I think, again, Bill's a stubborn person. And as much as he changes, he's not going to change as well. Mm-hmm. People change, people don't change.
Right.
Right? And this is Bill, like, I think kind of like, yeah, immediately was like trying to accept it. He knew he couldn't do it.
In the way that it was being asked.
Yeah. And he wasn't going to let Frank have his way because as we know, Bill wants it his own way, but it is, as Frank says, objectively kind of beautiful,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he goes through that day for sure knowing what's going to happen. He had decided this was going to be his last day. I don't think there was like a moment where he decided during the day. I think he just like he kind of knew from then on like this was not going to be there. I think it was his idea to do the marriage ceremony at the piano. And I think we don't get it. We don't get a scene of this, but I think he played their song. And we know what song that is.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise, like, why are they at the piano?
Yeah.
And like just the thought of that having happened, the thought that they were going through their first day together, No,
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's the same food almost.
Oh, I knew the food.
It's the same wine.
This is terrible.
He plays the same song, but it's all represented as like very, very like differently. I think it's just such a, it's like, it's beautiful and it's tragic and it's selfish, but it is what it is, like in this world, there's no room for two old men with ailments that can't, are going to come to a point where you can't protect each other anymore, so go out on your own terms kind of thing. Except the differences are very apparent. He doesn't sit the opposite side of the table. He sits close to him. Mm-hmm. He turns the plate. Mm-hmm. Frank
and then he turns it
a
anyway.
Little bit more.
God damn it.
There's a point where I kind of like had a feeling that I knew that there was pills in the bottle, because again, the difference from the first day is that he doesn't open the bottle in the room. He opens it in the other room. Mm-hmm. I think even Frank suspects until he sees him take the packet of pills and puts it in the wine glass. It's like, okay, maybe he didn't do what I think he did.
Frank got a crazy dosage of whatever that is, by the way.
Well, it's
like a wild dosage.
Enough to kill a horse.
Yeah. And then some.
And yeah, I love those subtle differences from the first way. I mean, posture probably. I don't know if you noticed anything or because you mentioned it earlier, but like I'm sure Bill was probably more relaxed than before, And again, like the mirroring of the day that they met. Just so beautiful.
I hate it.
And them walking off out of focus.
I know.
I noticed like. We don't even focus on it. They walk basically away from the focal point. Just done so massively beautiful. Yeah. I don't know. I have written down like you are You were my purpose. And like God, again, like talking about how we all search for purpose, you know, and we all have this idea of like love and relationships and like the one and these things, you know, and like Bill went through 40, 50 years of what? Like being a person that was like, thought he knew his purpose, you know, thought he was like not better than everyone, but understood who people were and understood and it was like, you guys are going to be sorry kind of thing. And like, you like believes he was a truther in that sense, you know, it didn't fit in at all with like the real world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like, it took a person, you know, like I think he very much feels like he knew who he was for half of his lifetime. You know, more than half of this lifetime. And then this person comes along and changes that, like disrupts that, you know? And again, I go back to like, what more can you ask for than like more good days with someone? What more can you ask for than like to have someone be your purpose? Such like that line doesn't mean much until it comes from Bill. You know, I think like a teenager saying that is not the same as, you know, Bill saying it.
Right.
Because this is a guy who like knows who he is and doesn't apologize for it. You know, but then like is vulnerable in this moment to be like, I didn't know.
Yeah, like I feel like he really didn't know what he was capable of fully. He knew what he was capable of under the restrictions of what his life was. And then here comes this person and kind of turns all of your armor upside down. It's like everything that you thought you had to build up to protect yourself is no longer relevant because this person's not here to treat you the way that maybe you've been interacting with people for your entire life. And I think that is really special. And that's why like you can dedicate yourself to another person is because they give you the space to like explore all the parts of you too. The parts that you're afraid of, the parts that you're ashamed of, the parts of you maybe don't like or don't understand as much. There was safety in that relationship. And even though we don't see that as much in Frank, I'm sure Frank also got that from Bill in different ways. We just see it so much more obviously in Bill because we start off with this, you know, closed, angry, fearful person.
Yeah. And I think that we get to the point where I think we're going to slowly realize that like Bill is Frank. You know, I'm sorry. Bill is Joel. You understood, but
I did.
My mouth did not understand. Bill is Joel.
Yeah.
And this was true in the game as well, in the sense that like Bill was this crazy guy. His partner left him. You could see he probably pushed him away. He doesn't like anyone being in his territory. He's so much of a loner. He's definitely like, he probably talks to himself a lot, you know. This is a guy that like is so hell bent on pushing others away from him and like avoiding people. He probably has more, since he could control what he knows in his entire world, he like probably enjoys the infected more because at least he can predict them. And he can put up traps and he knows how they react to things and he can keep them away from everything. It's the people that he has a problem with. It's the people that come along all the time that like he has a problem with.
Yeah.
And like Joel, when we meet Bill in the video game, again, very, very like we see what Joel could become without Tess, without Ellie, you know, and that is supposed to be kind of like a little bit of a warning to him, like to him, or at least to Ellie, in the sense of like, who am I with, you know, because if this is like who Bill is and like Joel is very much going the same direction. Like, this is what he could become. Like, this is really interesting, you know? And if it isn't for Ellie, Joel becomes Bill, you know? This guy who's always going to push people away, hates everyone, like, doesn't let them near him, touch him, do whatever, you know? And in the same way, we get something it's different from the game, but it does show us the exact same idea. Bill is Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And without someone like Frank, what does Joel become?
Yeah.
You know?
And the difference between being led and motivated by like that fear and the desire to control versus like love.
Mm-hmm. The only time you asked me when I cried, the only time I cried was Ellie reading the letter. And it's when it's hearing Bill's voice saying, like, I found someone that was worth saving. I saved them. I protected them. And you need to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that was like me making that connection. That was awesome. And then they get to save Tess, you know, use these things to do the same for the people that you love, you know. Again, something that is doing subtextually what Tess was saying was like, you need to open yourself up. Mm-hmm. You need to stop being selfish, closing yourself off, doing all these things. Find someone to protect, find someone to like, that's worth saving, and like do something there. Mm-hmm. You know? Joel's probably getting tired of hearing about this, to be honest.
Yeah. Joel's like, please shut the fuck up.
He's like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I get it, guys, you know?
Yeah.
But that's like the moment, you know, of like hearing that and realizing that, like, oh my God, yeah, Bill is Joel. Joel is Bill, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's finding that thing. This is who we are as. This is what we are made for. This is why men like us exist. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is because I relate so much to Joel in this episode. Maybe it is so much because I like understand Bill. I see Bill and Frank's arguments as like our arguments, you know, and I see the differences there. I see how Ellie asks too many questions and you ask 3 or 4 questions, all searching for the one answer, but I can't. I'm like, which one do you want me to answer first? Like, yes, too many questions. Like I get it, you know, but the finding someone, that was like the moment where like, that's why it hit me so much. It's just because like I could see, I know who these people are. And I understand like when you give them that purpose, like how much it means. And that purpose is because of other people, you know, there's no, like you can be right. I can be, it doesn't matter how pretentious I am, how like much of it, like how much like I know better than other people. It doesn't matter how much like people just don't understand me kind of thing. Like if there's not that one person that like you can just be you around, you can just like find some purpose in, then like none of it matters, you know? I think the thing for me that's interesting about this episode, the one thing that I asked myself, seeing this play out with Bill and Frank and all their stuff, is like, how do you build something that lasts? You know, whether it's an outbreak or a pandemic or a post-apocalyptic thing, or even in real life where there's nothing happening. It's like we try and build legacies. You know, we try and build something, a dynasty that's something we can pass down, things like that. But it's like really hard to do that. Like it's impossible almost, you know. We've seen how history always has an overturning of things, you know, nothing ever lasts in terms of like empires, and they always come crumbling down, you know. In our individual things is like we see how this plays out in, say, like a show like Succession, where this one guy built everything and then his kids are so incompetent that he can't pass it down and it'll never last what he built because they're going to screw it up, you know? And so like the idea that like Bill started this episode trying to build something that would last for a long, long time for him. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter. And it didn't matter that like it was for no one, you know, and it goes on to be for no one. It's just an empty place without those two people. And at the end of the day, it was like, if it wasn't for Frank, this would have not even lasted as long as it did. And it's also like purposeless, you know, because at the end of the day, this is going to be left empty and alone. You're going to be gone and you can't have control over what happens to it. So the thing that lasts to me is the relationship that no one else sees, but for them, like it matters, you know? And I think to me, that's like such an important question and message, you know? And that's just the thing that's like going through my head through all of this. And yeah, I find that like maybe that's the thing that will, you know, Joel is going to be wrestling with, you know, throughout the rest of the series. It's like, even though he doesn't get to experience everything that Frank and Bill was like we experienced it, like I think he understands Bill the same way that Bill understood Joel. And he's going to like be wrestling with the fact that like he's failed so far, and unless he does something differently, he's going to fail again.
Yeah. That's like right at the beginning of the episode that I said, like, The Last of Us is truly about relationships. And yeah, in my personal life, it's like you can chase money, you can chase things that you think you can control to make yourself feel safer or less out of control, less likely to be hurt in whatever capacity. But, you know, if you're not open to letting yourself be affected by another person, you are missing out on pieces of yourself. Because every person that we meet and connect with shows and tells us something about ourselves, highlights, shows, brings it out. So to be able to meet someone and to make the choice over and over and over again, multiple times, every single day, for years and years and years, that you make the choice to, again, engage and reciprocate. That's all relationships are. It's a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's two people deciding every day that they're going to keep like that give and take going. I just think that's it. What the fuck else are you doing? Because in 100 years from now, when global warming has everything fucked, or in 100 years from now, when cordyceps do mutate and we're all in The Last of Us, the things that last are the relationships that we build. And they're the things that bring the most joy in our life. Also, cute little thing on the note that Bill leaves, it says to whomever, but probably Joel. The little M is like squeezed in. So it looks like to whoever, and the M is like plopped on the top. And I like to think that as Bill was writing it, that Frank was like, you know, it's whomever. And Bill was like, no, Joel's not going to care. And like they had a little discussion about it.
That's interesting. You can assume that like, that's a good interpretation, but also like if Frank didn't know that they were both committing suicide until the end of the thing, then like he wasn't around when Bill wrote that letter, because otherwise that would have given the ghost away, you know what I'm saying, given up the ghost. So I think that like maybe it is something that they maybe argued about before. It was like, whom, not whoever, it's whom. He's gonna get mad at me if I say whoever.
It's so obvious. It's very clearly whoever, and then the M is just like flopped on the top of it.
Again, I feel like the production designers, the people who are building this, everyone's having fun putting in these little details, all the paintings that happen, just like here's another painting of Bill, and here's all these, what paintings did Frank paint, you know, and then like what are the flowers that he likes, you know, and then like here's this cane, like clearly like telling a backstory, you know, like I love those little details that they're clearly putting into like every little thing.
And actually I do have a question now that we just brought up this note because in the note he mentions that they leave the window open.
Yeah. Did you not know that was the same window that was open that they left?
No, I did. I'm just now wondering.
It's probably not the same window because that's maybe on the second story, and then there's anyway.
I think we're led to feel that it's the same window.
It doesn't matter. It's a window.
No, so I'm wondering like when in the day did he write that note? Because in my head, and it doesn't make sense, they wrote that note in the bedroom. But that would not make any sense.
She didn't find it.
They found it in the kitchen, so that means that he would have had to come back out and leave that note.
That's the thing. You mentioned that Frank had a lot of drugs. Sure did. There's a possibility that he went first.
Oh gosh, can you imagine? That's so sad.
You know, he had to get him into bed.
Yeah.
Maybe he had to leave to like lock the doors or do whatever, and then he had to come back, you know, and maybe he wrote the note then.
Yeah.
Who knows? You got to make sure that the place isn't going to burn down whenever, you know, or maybe Frank was like, hey, we're both dying. Maybe you should write a letter to Joel. So maybe it was after. Maybe he did correct him. Like, you know,
not just the thing. Honestly, also maybe peak Mattias energy.
Maybe Frank realized that at a certain point, it's like, I wasn't planning on this. Maybe you should go write a letter to Joel.
Should we leave a note? But no, I just like the idea they're both like slipping into unconsciousness, and like one of the last things they discuss is like, it's whomever and not whoever, right?
Yeah, so in that case, they were both there for the note, and then like he's like, I never liked you, and Frank is like, don't say that.
So why would you say that right now?
Now hilarious. They had something. Their last little arguments were about this note that they were writing Joel.
Yeah.
I love how excited Ellie is. Mm-hmm. Like, first of all, she stayed put when he asked her to stay.
She was sat. She knew.
Stay here. And she stayed. You got to give it to her. He went and built a whole battery and came back, and she was still in the same spot. Do you think she like ran off and then like came back when she noticed he was coming back, or do you think she stayed there?
I like to think that Ellie felt the weight of reading Tessa's name and just knew. Silent, not quiet moment.
But then he says like, okay, there's going to be some rules. She's up. She's like, okay, yeah, tell me the rules. Yeah, this is what's going to happen. Yeah, no, yes, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think there's a part of her that was nervous he wasn't going to come back when he left?
Who knows? I mean, like they got to the point, like there's definitely like a clear what now? Mm-hmm.
So I think when he comes back, she's just like ready. Because for as much as we know, like, Ellie isn't quite 100% ready to trust Joel in his entirety, she does trust him in a way. And I think there might be a little part of her that's like, we got to where he needed. He obviously doesn't like me that much. He threw food at me. Like, where do I actually stand in this relationship now that the plan that you thought you were doing to honor Tessa's memory is not available to us anymore? And I think that's why she's just so ready to like activate when he comes back in, because she's so happy that he's like back. Yeah,
for sure. And happy that he's back, but I think like happy that like they're going to continue on this journey. Yeah. You know, that like he's not going to just like bring her back to the QZ, you know, and he lays out the things. I mean, you notice he's still being Joel, you know, okay, built battery, brother in Wyoming. We're going to go do that. And then she's like, hey, well, hold on. Don't get excited.
Yeah, you sit. No.
It's not going to be a road trip.
Yeah. Just because you've never been in a car before, Ellie. No, it's just, really spectacular.
Did you cry with the seatbelt, with him putting on the seatbelt on
I cried so much.
Yeah.
Mattias, I cried. Yeah. No, there was so much crying happening. There was crying happening because...
Do you think Joel is learning to protect her? Don't eat the microphone.
I'm gonna eat it.
You can't hear this. You can't see it. Yeah. No, yeah. There's Joel's... Something's changing, right? he gets mad. He's like, leave it where it is. But then also the song's on. It's like, oh no, this is a good song.
Yeah. That's what I mean. The choice to let yourself be affected by another person. There are moments where he's letting himself be affected by Ellie.
Right. Again, the difference between the game is the fact that like Bill never gets there, but Joel's going to. And I think that's what's interesting here is that like it is like we see that Bill does get there and now Joel's starting to. Things are going to go his way finally. They're like Bill left a battery, things to build a battery. He left him a car. He's like, okay, finally, maybe something can happen. And maybe, and he's grown towards Ellie and her quirks, things like that, and he's like, yeah, she's right. I do need to take a shower. Like he sees something in her, all these kinds of things. It is very different because it was, I think, more impactful the fact that like Joel was going to be different from Bill, and realize that like, oh, if I don't change, like I'm going to be like this person. Yeah. Here it's, the fact that like he sees the kinship in Bill and realizes that like he might be right, in a certain way. I don't know, a difference and a change that I kind of don't like, but also like. Yeah. Very interesting. Anything to say about the window? Anything to?
No, it's just crying. I just cried.
Sure.
I just,
Cool. Well, that's episode 3 of The Last of Us. Long time. Yeah. And we look forward to next week's episode where, Ellie might find some gay porno mags in the back of a truck and, she... we
can only hope.
But then they're going to like be stuck in your favorite city.
Pittsburgh.
Yay.
Pew, pew, pew.
Which is where Shannon is from.
Yes.
If no one knew that before, she loves Pittsburgh.
City's a mess, but I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun rollicking time, and I think nothing bad is gonna happen.
We're on a road trip.
Yeah, it's just gonna be a road trip from here into Wyoming. Yep. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Just a quick stop in Pittsburgh, and
then they're just on the road for like 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much I'm anticipating except for the fact that like just the story's finally starting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I came for, the Joel and Ellie extravaganza, is like rolling full stop. So I'm very excited for that. I'm also excited to see, oh gosh, what is her name? She's in Yellow Jackets. That girl, that lady we like. What's her name?
Monica Lewinsky?
Melanie
Linsky.
Okay.
I'm getting Monica Lewinsky.
There it is.
And then Melanie Linsky.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
I like her. So I'm kind of excited to see like what she's going to be doing.
I think it's a new character, right?
I think so too.
In Pittsburgh, normally it's going to be like, it's bandits and then we're fighting our way out of the town.
Like some randos, right?
Eventually they're going to meet, I'm assuming we're going to meet Sam and I'm forgetting names, but like the brothers, which is, again, like big moments of the game. I can't wait to get into their story because we haven't delved into it much. And I feel like if we got Bill and Frank like fleshed out, then like, yeah, imagine how their story is going to be fleshed out.
No.
I assume we're not going to meet them until
maybe 5 or 6.
Well, at least at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Oh,
they weren't in the teaser, whatever Melanie Linsky's going on, but this is how we push into that. And I think 5 is going to be all them traveling with Sam and them and what happens from that thing, which is even more devastating. If you thought Bill and Frank were devastating, listen, we've been joking about it the whole time. Like hope has hit an all-time high and we're going down from here.
Just get ready to get wrecked every fucking week. Just every week you're going to get wrecked.
You thought you cried today. Wait till the next 4 episodes or 6 episodes. Sorry. Don't want to cut ourselves short there. Yeah, I think that's what we're anticipating. I've been looking forward to seeing how their story is going to be fleshed out. I didn't expect this Bill and Frank thing. I'm so glad we got it. But I am hoping we get back to Joel and Ellie.
Yeah.
And
I'm
just
glad
let
it
us
was
see.
a strong deviation because, like I said, if the performances would have been anything less than absolutely superb, which is what they were, I think I would have spent more of the time being like, oh man, I wish this wasn't an hour and 15 minutes like away from the characters that I already am so invested in. So yeah, shout out to some magnificent character work happening there. But I'm ready to be back in the Joel and Ellie vehicle.
I regret to inform everyone on the podcast and listening in. We hit an all-time low with the Ellie fuck counter.
Oh no.
We got 3 fucks out of her this week. And unfortunately, only 2 of them really count because one of them was an honorary fuck because she was reading the letter from Bill. And it was technically Bill's fuck, but we could give it to Ellie because she did say it.
Ellie adopted the fuck.
So, so 2, maybe 3 this episode, but it makes sense. We didn't get much of her this episode, so not unsurprising. That's kind of what I expected. But again, we got 13 last time, so that's still going strong.
It's insane.
And I imagine that when they have their picnic in Pittsburgh, it's going to be even more fucks.
It's gonna be fuck city.
I feel sorry for all the people that expected, because I remember everyone saying like, oh, wait till she meets Bill. We can't wait for that. We didn't get so many curse words. And unfortunately, she never got to meet Bill.
Joke's on you. Bill's fucking dead.
Go play the game. Because that relationship is so funny. I love what we got here. Murray Bartlett, Nick Offerman. Like I said, I knew they're just so good at what they do. So good. You know what? If The Last of Us, if that's what the whole purpose of this show is to give us stories like these, then I have nothing to complain about, I guess. Anything else to say before we close out this thing? Great. Again, remember, this has been the Codependent Content Podcast with Shannon Riley, Mattias Marasigan. If you have any thoughts about the episodes, things you want to email us about, I don't know, say something, do whatever, you can email us at codependentcontent@gmail.com. You can find our social media links in the notes below, where most of the places I'm Mattias Allegro. That's Mattias without the H and Allegro with one L.
Why would you not just spell it?
I don't know.
Mattiasallegro. That's Mattias Allegro across most social media platforms. I'm Shannon Grace Riley. I'm not going to spell that out for you guys.
Until today, I didn't know she knew how to spell my name, so it's good that we've reached that level in our relationship. She still hasn't memorized my phone number, so we're still working on that. But you know, relationships are hard, as we've learned in this episode.
It's out of convenience. I'm not trying to learn another phone number.
Resource management is all I can say. Shannon's looking for the next trap that she can go trip and email us, do whatever. Again, we record this live every week on Discord. Join the Discord if you like to just have conversations. I love talking about this stuff. If you found us through TikTok, thank you for coming. I'm so glad you're here, because this is exactly what we would have wanted, was to talk about this, but also to engage with another audience about these things.
And keep commenting. I love replying to everybody's comments. I love having the online conversations. So if you want to continue doing that, please do that. And then again, slide into the Discord, because we do live Q&As after we're done recording these podcasts, where we actually get to talk to our friends, both virtually and otherwise, about the show that we all love so much.
Yes. And also, like, if you want to watch this podcast, you can always watch it on YouTube. If you want to get clips from it, go follow on YouTube. And you can watch it on Spotify too. So if you're into that, we do a video component. Other than that, I think that's all that there is to say. I don't know. When you're lost in the darkness, search for the light. See you next time.